Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the medium-term budget policy statement by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana painted a bleak picture of the country's finances. Godongwana says South Africa's economic and fiscal outlook remain weak. He also revealed government's spending has exceeded revenue by 200 billion rand this year. Let's get reaction now from the Black Business Council with CEO Kganki Matabane. Thank you very much for joining us here on ENC. Matabane, just firstly, there were some political parties, opposition parties who were saying they expected it to be a little bit more bleak than it was. Did you find that rather it wasn't that negative as South Africans expected?
Good afternoon, Mashero and the viewers. We also like to congratulate the Springboks on their historic win, and especially Siya Kolisi as our captain. And I think we can learn a lot as a country from what they've achieved. And our issue regarding the statement is that whatever you do, you need to say, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. And currently in South Africa, we've got the problem of high unemployment, we've got the problem of economic growth, we've got the problem of the rising debt, and we've got a problem of the tax base being eroded. And you cannot then solve the issue of the debt by forever spending money on consumption. You should spend money on something that will also then bring money. And hence we were a bit disappointed that the minister did not indicate in any way how he's going to support small businesses. It's good, well and good what he's done regarding the grants, but we cannot spend all the money on grants. We need to spend money on productive economies and supporting small businesses, supporting black business, supporting business owned by women, owned by youth, owned by people living with disabilities, in our view, is productive. And that is also included in the very same government's National Development Plan 2030, which then indicated that for us to deal decisively with the unemployment, we're supposed to support small business, and the small business will create 90% of the 11 million jobs by 2030. We're left with 5 years almost to 2030. We have not created any proper jobs. We have not supported small business. So I don't know where are all these jobs going to come from. You cannot create jobs by creating a society that depends on grants. That part has to be covered, yes, we agree. But let's also take some money out of that or take it from somewhere else and support businesses, because those are the people who will create businesses. Those businesses will create employment. We'll then be able to increase the tax base. Those companies that we are creating and employees who are appointed will then pay tax. The SARS commissioner's problem will be resolved. But also you'll be able to deal with the debt issue that we have.
Yeah, and I mean, the budget back in February had actually, forecast economic growth in South Africa to be at around 0.9% for this year, and the dream was 1.5% for next year. But, we're growing so slowly along with even the number of South Africans. Our population is also growing, so nothing is really, we're stagnant. Our economy is very stagnant, besides the fact that it looks bleak.
Yeah, so which tells you cannot do the same things that you've been doing for the past 5-10 years. You have to think out of the box, and you have to do things that will stimulate the economy instead of trying to say we have a challenge of money. Then what do we do? We then decide not to spend. That will never grow the economy at the end of the day. We'll end up having to go and borrow more and more. But if you borrow to fund what is called OPEX, operating expenses, it does not take you anywhere. You have to fund something that will bring back the money to the fiscal, so that we can deal with the issue of the tax base, but also deal with the issue of the debt.
Yeah, and also, what he mentioned about the fact that, we know that Transnet for the first time ever asked for that 100 billion rand bailout. He didn't even mention that, but at the same time saying that their performance has been underwhelming, which is quite true. I mean, what's happening with Transnet and our ports is inflationary on its own, besides our energy crisis. So all of that combined is also just adding to our problems.
Yes, but that points to lack of decisiveness. Because remember, there was a presidential review committee on SOCs that was appointed in 2012. And they released, they actually released the report in 2012. And we're sitting now in 2023, 11 years later.
Yeah.
None of the recommendations were actually implemented. Instead of implementing those ones, we're talking about doing an analysis. But do analysis for what? Because the analysis was done by that committee. It came with recommendations to say, this is how you deal with the SOCs. And they almost adopted the same model of the Chinese, where you have a holding company for SOCs, and then the board are not appointed by political influence. They are appointed on merit. And then the board are left on their own to appoint competent CEOs. And in that way, you'll be able to hold the board accountable. But now there's too much political meddling. Look now, for example, there's no CEO for Eskom for almost a year. You can't find that thing in a private sector company because they mean business. We need to learn from them. Hence, I'm saying we must learn from the Springboks. Imagine if the Springboks did not have a coach for a year.
It would be a mess. It would be a mess. And, Ntate Matabane, I want to go back to something that you said about businesses and how that wasn't mentioned a lot. But if you look at what he said and what he's been saying, those austerity measures that we were expecting to be announced yesterday, we weren't really told about it. They weren't divulged. But it's quite concerning to know that, our debt budget is higher than what government can afford, even with our health, education and policing. Those are three very important departments. And if you are giving them less because you have too much debt to service, it really just shows that we are in deep, deep trouble. And it's going to trickle down even to the households, besides small businesses as well.
Yes, and remember, a typical middle class in South Africa pays tax because, as you know, there are very few people who are working, who are employed, and there are very few people who will meet the tax bracket where they can pay tax. But when you are a middle class, you pay tax, but at the same time, you have to pay for private security, private education, private health. Now you have to pay for private electricity. So the challenge that this is going to bring is that the people who can afford are going to move out of South Africa. So you're going to erode even further the tax base. So hence, it's very, very important that we must fix our country, because if we don't do that, the people who are not supposed to leave are going to leave. And we're going to be then left with people who are not necessarily contributing much from a tax-based point of view.
Yeah.
And then we're going to the IMF route. And once we get to the IMF route, then the country is gone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they call it debt blowout in terms of them trying to avoid it. And apparently by March, government is saying they would have run out of coffers, in fact. And, we can't be borrowing again. We already are servicing high debt. But, Ntate Matabane, you mentioned something also quite important for me as well, is the financing of the NHI and how the middle class is going to suffer even there, because the tax rebates that we get usually from our SARS tax returns in terms of medical aid, there's talk that is not going to come to you as the middle class who has to pay for your private health. It's going to go into the NHI to assist those who can't afford private health. So I don't know what you think about that, because it means that every single cent that the middle class makes is not ours. We're working for everybody else.
Yeah, I think government is doing a very, very bad job in communicating the advantages of the NHI. And again, from a timing point of view, I don't think it's the right time to stop the subsidy.
Okay.
You have to make the NHI work first, and then you can stop the subsidy as a way of encouraging the middle class to join. Because if you look at all over the world, the first world countries, NHI works, and majority of the people don't even have medical aid because they know the health systems work. But unfortunately, in South Africa, because there's a trust deficit from a government point of view, people don't believe what government says, whether they are telling the good.
We're despondent. We're asking ourselves where the money is really going to go.
Yeah, someone is going to eat the money. So I think they should, for me, if it was me, I will implement NHI first, make it work, and then people want to join the trend that is moving. Once you've got it working, everyone else will come and join it.
All right.
But you don't want to be seen to be forcing people to try and join something that may not really work.